What is up, beautiful people? Welcome to the Daily Sales Show. I'm your host, Will, and today we've got an absolutely spicy, quick 30-minute quick-fire show with one of the best in the space. We're going to be chatting about how to craft a cold call pitch that actually converts. And to help me break down this topic, one of the GOATs in the space, we've got Josh Braun. How are you doing today, Josh?
Will, I have a big problem with this title of this
You
webinar.
do? Hang on, let me
Yes,
go back. Already? Oh, no.
yes, I have a problem with this. Do you know, now you've read a lot of my stuff. Do you know the problem I have with this title of this webinar?
If I have to guess, it's that the goal shouldn't be to convert.
Yes, because when our goal is to convert a cold call into what we want, a next step, a meeting, a demo, what ends up happening is we behave in ways that feel pushy. That's because our intent or what we believe going in affects what we say. So what I want to start with before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of the talk track is the intention, which actually matters just as much as what you say and how you say it. The intention should be to discover if the prospect has a potential problem that you might be able to help with, but to not assume they actually have one. In other words, to detach from the outcome. And we're going to certainly ask a question when we get into this about a potential problem. We're not going to assume there's anything to convert here, because if we're calling someone that does not have a problem, there's no need for your solution because your solution has no value without a problem. So the mindset here is sorting, not converting.
Sorting, not converting, not assuming that they have a problem or leading with your agenda, but focusing on validating that problem that you mentioned there. I'm looking forward to hearing how you actually do that, Josh. A couple of pieces of housekeeping, everyone. Naturally, these shows are always recorded, so you can either go back and watch this later if you have to jump off early, or if you want to listen to something Josh said again and maybe take some more notes, you can go over to sellbetter.xyz and you'll find every show we've ever done in the archive, so you can also learn some more stuff and check out some of the upcoming shows we have as well. I want to say a big thank you as well. These shows would not be possible. It wouldn't be possible to do these every day, at least, if we didn't have awesome partners like the folks over at Gong and Just Cool. Josh, we were just kind of getting into the agenda a little bit there, but we're going to start talking about a cold call structure that you use and it builds trust, how to create curiosity without pitching, just like you said, and a real world talk track with some role plays along the way so you can actually see this stuff in action. So Josh, you started talking about it there. And I think this relates very much so to something I see you talk about all the time online, which is this idea of detaching from the outcome that we want, which is book meetings, make sales, close deals, fat paychecks, even sometimes just having some validation that we are in the right career path. So I wanted to get an idea of your mindset, how you typically talk to reps, because I think if you don't have that right, all of the rest of the stuff we're going to touch on today is going to fall flat.
Yeah, and I think it kind of gets back to when our intent is to book a meeting, we aren't even aware of this, but what ends up happening is we say and do things that feel pushy on the other side because our intent, what we have going in, affects what we say and what we do. Just like if you're in a mall and a mall kiosk person says, "You have beautiful brown eyes," I kind of know that her intent is to draw me in to sell me some C-scrub, right? She's there to sell everybody, regardless of if they need the product or not. In fact, they're very pushy. If you ever engage with them, they'll rub it on your hands, even if you tell them you don't use lotion and that you're, stage 4 cancer and you're dying in a couple of days, they'll still try to sell you the C-scrub. It's the same thing with these retention specialists. I have a recording that I share in my workshops of someone trying to cancel their internet through Comcast. And they gave him a very valid reason, which is, I don't want to give you a reason. I just want to cancel it. And they kept him on the phone for 10 minutes because the intent, or what this person's paid to do by the manager, is to keep them as a customer. So our intention affects what we say and do. On the opposite side of that, if we let go of that and we let go of assuming that the person actually has a problem that we solve, and we're going to discover if they have it, and we'll talk about how we do that in a second, we actually have a very different energy on the call. It's not that we don't care, but that we know we don't actually control what the prospect says and we don't know the exact situation. We have a hypothesis. So we're sort of leaning back and not leaning forward. And the prospect can feel that in your tonality and your voice, and it's more inviting.
I think the thing you said earlier, the one that's helped me more than anything in sales, is that word if you're a fit, It takes a lot of the pressure away where someone feels like this person's going to sell me anything, even if it's not in my best interest. And I think that's what a lot of us have to face with the reputation of salespeople, because that's what people think of. They think of the mall person who's going to scrub your soap and whatnot. So when you come at it from a different way, it can be really refreshing and trust building there as well.
It's also a truth in sales that you don't control how people respond to what it is that you're saying. And so when you're focused on that, you end up being very anxious and defensive because you're trying to get people to do what you want, but you don't control what other people say, how they react. if they pick up the phone, how they respond to what it is that you're saying. So the idea here, and this is really grounded in Stoicism, is to tune out what you don't control, your quota, what you're selling. I mean, you're working for this company, your boss, your manager, your quota, your territory, and to tune in what you do control, which is who you're going to call, the hypothesis you have, how you build your list. Build it very strategically. So you're calling the right people. You're not calling 17 different people in a list. You're calling these specific people that are like your customers that have experienced this problem, and what you say and how you sound, and then to just tune out everything else. And it's something very freeing and liberating about that. Same thing when you apply for a job. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this well, but I've prepared and knocked it out of the park with job interviews and still don't get the job. I just watched Wimbledon, an unbelievable finals and semifinals, and both of these players played amazing, but one still lost. You can do everything right and still have the cold call not go the way you expect it to go. So having it go one way or another way, they're all part of the same experience. So if you just sort of flow with it in that way, it's just relaxing in a sense, because you're not sort of getting wound up in an outcome that you can't control.
In these ifs, maybes, what if this happens? It doesn't matter. And I think this is not just great sales advice, it's great life advice as well. What are you doing? Great book on this. You've been talking about this for, I would say, much longer than this book's even been out, but Mel Robbins, a book called Let Them. You can get an idea of what the book is about just from the title. Let them react this way to whatever. It's more a sign of what's going on in their world. That's what they're controlling. But the part in the book that I really liked was let me, and then that's the part you do focus on. What do you control? How do you show up? How prepared are you? And ultimately, if bad things happen, like you don't get the job or the cold call goes badly, that still isn't a reflection of the worth that you've done because you've done the work correctly.
Yeah, and I would even say it's not that it goes badly. It goes how it goes, because they're both part of the same experience, right? Because that's the nature of cold calling. Most of the time, it doesn't go the way you want it to go. It's just like when you go surfing, there's big waves and short waves and long waves and tall waves, and sometimes you wipe out. And it's not like it's bad. It's just is. It's the nature of surfing, just like the nature of cold calling is people are going to be rude. They're going to hang up. The nature of going to a dog park is people will not pick up after their dog. You can get upset about it. You can pound your fists about it, but then you're going to have a lot of anxiety and you're going to suffer. So if you just accept that the reality of it is you're going to hear things that are going to be how a cold call is, and you're just going to accept it all as part of the experience. Like surfing, like if a wave, like if a surfer crashes into a wave, they don't like say bad wave. They're like, oh, that's just one of those waves. I'm going to go surf on
the wave.
It's a wave. That's a great way to say it. Well, it's a call. It's not good or bad. It just is.
I think I've been through cycles of different ways of reacting to things in the past. Last year I went to Iceland and a fella jumped up on the plane as we were all deboarding. We, as you get out of a plane, go row by row, right? The person in front of you gets up, walks off the plane, and you're behind them. You let them go, and then they go, right? It's just kind of like courtesy thing. I find this guy kind of just tried to rush straight past me instead of giving me time to pick up and get my bag out and stuff like that. And so I put my hand out and I stopped him with the chest. And then me and this guy were like squaring up against each other. And he was like, "You're a bleep." And I was like, "Am I?" And then I like kind of took a step close to him, and it was we almost had a kind of physical confrontation on the plane. Yes, he was not doing the thing that you're meant to do on a plane, but I chose how I reacted to that. And I basically let it ruin my entire day. And then I got an earful from my partner at the time. About how I almost had a fight on a plane and got removed from Canada because I'm resident. So this happened yesterday. I got back on a plane for Boston and someone did it. And I just went, that's going to happen. It's not my job to stand up and teach people a lesson. Same thing kind of relates a lot to what we're saying here. Now, I don't want to touch too much on this.
There's also another way to look at that, which is maybe this person has to get off for some reason that I might not know about. Yeah, there's another way to shift that. And not to get too off, but meditation helps with this because it lets you be less reactionary. It gives you like a slight pause because you're aware of your thoughts. You're like, hey, I'm about to intervene here. Do I really want to do that?
Also writing down how you feel before you take action on it as well. Another one, really good journaling.
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to talk about Josh's cold call opener, which is a very different one to the ones you might see out there. There's a lot of takes, quite contrarian. People get very into this on like, should you use permission-based opener? Should you go straight in or like just share the reason for your call up front? Josh, this topic divides people and I want to get onto your opener in a minute. Why do you think that is?
Because people think there's a right way to do it. So there isn't. I've used both. A lot of people I know have used both, and a lot of people have success with both. The idea is to experiment here and to find ones that work well for you. When I first started cold calling 25 years ago, I would call someone, they would pick up, and I would simply say, "Hey, James, my name is Josh. We've never spoken before, but I was on your website and was hoping you could help me out for a moment." And some would say yes, and some would say, what do you need? What do you want? That's a permission-based opener. I also do ones that are not like that, which we'll talk about today, where Will picks up the phone, and we'll role play that right now.
You want
Go
to
ahead,
go
Will.
and give it that shot? I'll put it on
Yeah,
the screen so people
say
can take a
hello.
note. Ring, ring. Hello.
Will?
Yes, this is Will. Who's speaking?
Hey, Will, it's Josh with Acme.
Josh Acme. I don't think we've spoken before, Josh. What's this about?
Yeah, I'm an ad rep. I'm calling about the Sell Better podcast. If you don't mind me asking, do you still run sponsorships for that, or am I completely lost?
Yeah, at least part of that's my responsibility, Josh. Why? What can I do for you?
Okay, and then I will go into my next part of the cold call, which is a question that illuminates a potential problem. Now, when we're talking at people, when we're making statements and we're pitching, it creates a reaction of resistance because no one likes being explained to, especially if there's no problem and you're pitching me a solution, which is why you hear we have a vendor for that. We're not interested all day long. We have a vendor for that is not an objection. It is a truth. No matter what you sell, people are getting the job done. So what I'm going to do in my question is I'm just going to label all the ways they're getting the job done. So I might say, hey, Will, when you edit your podcast, is it done in-house or do you outsource that?
We do that in-house for the time being.
Oh, you've probably looked into outsourcing it.
Yeah, we have in the past. It was a little bit more expensive. We do one of these every single day, so the volume just didn't make it make sense.
Notice it was almost impossible for Will to say we have a vendor for that, we have a solution for that, because I'm actually calling it out in advance. So, hey, person selling Captivate IQ commission software, hey, when you run commissions for your 120 reps over there, do you use spreadsheets like Excel or Google Sheets, or is it more of like an automated process?
We are still in the spreadsheet world.
And now listen to this. The person that you're calling that's been in RevOps for 15 years probably has considered automating it, which is what your solution does. So we're simply going to say this. Hey, well, you've been in RevOps for 15 years. You've probably looked into automating it.
Yeah, we have. We did a big review about 6 different solutions a couple of years back.
Sounds like your commission structure was too complicated for automation.
Yeah, we did the cost and the time it was taking us, and we figured it was just better to carry on doing it manually versus buying a special tool for it.
So what we're doing here is we're drawing people out. So if you go back to the last example, if you look back when, so someone doing interviewing applicants after our opener, we might say, Will, I'm not sure if you're seeing this. Now that phrase, Will, what do you think that phrase does? Why did I put that in there? Not sure if you're seeing this. What is that, the psychology behind that?
You're coming from a place of low pressure, no assumptions, but you're also building some credibility. Because it's kind of like, not sure if you're seeing this too. You're speaking with people like them, but I think mainly just not coming at them too accusatory because people get defensive when they feel accused of something.
That's exactly it. It subconsciously says there's no assumptions or pressure here. I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but a bunch of companies that we work with, they're getting flooded by these AI generated job applications. They like clog up the system. They totally look legit. How are you spotting those before they hit your applicant tracking system? And then shut the front door and listen. Notice how specific the question is, and it gets back to your list. If your list is a bunch of people with different titles that don't care about this, this is going to bomb. But if you take the time to build a list of people that are probably doing this job, it's going to create, if you shut the front door, this sort of like awkward pause. And you just got to wait that out, because what you normally will hear when you really dial this question in most of the time with the right tonality is, well, we kind of do it by hand, or at which I'm going to say, oh, you've probably looked into tech that catches them in advance so you don't have to. And then they might say, what's that? And I've created an opening. Or they say, yeah, we looked into it. And I say, oh, it didn't work out for you. And again, I'm drawing people out versus filling their heads with information.
You haven't said anything about what you offer yet.
And I'm going to wait for them to ask.
Let's say that does get to that point, right? Because I love this. And I think we could even do an example call from start to finish. I might even try and take your flow and you can mark it on me, all right? You can judge me for it. Get involved here. But let's say we get to that point and we go, oh, yeah, well, we did look into some commission software a couple of years back. And then let's say we pick up where we left off. We found it wasn't worth the cost because it was just such a small task that I just carried on owning it, basically.
Okay, so this is great. This gets back to sorting, not selling. So big expensive problems get money, small ones don't. So if this person is running commissions for 5 people, I might say, sounds like you're only running commissions for like 5 people or so.
Well, at the time we've grown a little bit since then. So now it's about a dozen.
Okay. So if it's a dozen people, that is not a fit for this software, because this software is like 6 figures. I'm going to disqualify them and say, it sounds like we're not a fit. We typically work with companies that are, doing commissions for like 50 or 60. Hey, with your permission, we send out newsletters on all things comp from once in a while. Would you mind if I add you? Because it's not a fit. Maybe one day they'll grow or we'll tie.
Marketing.
That's on me on my list creation, because I probably
But-
could have used a Clay or another product to determine how many reps they had. But if that situation comes, a perfectly reasonable outcome is no problem. No need to push for a meeting. That's never going to close. So I'm going to just bow out and say, seems like we're not a fit. Thanks for chatting today, and just call the next person. I'm sorting out.
And sometimes when you do that as well, they'll be like, well, hold on. Can you tell me about what you give anyway? Because they're like, I thought you were going to sell me something, because that's what's going from the head. Let's pretend I didn't say 12. I said, that was a couple of years ago. We only had 20 reps at the time, but now we've grown to like 110. So it is a little bit more task. Why? What do you do?
Yeah. So then they say, what do you do? Right. So that's the moment in the call that I call the switch, meaning that person is now asking me rather than me asking them. And they're leaning forward because they're asking me a question that they care about. So I might say, when they answer that question, I might say something like this. Here's another example. So what we do is allow you, when you're driving down to Miami for an event, like I know you went to see Crunbin, instead of having to circle a lot or pay like $50 and have to leave early because you want to beat traffic, what we let you do is book a spot in advance for like $10. So you can get in when you want and leave when you want.
Right.
And then say, how does it work? And then I might,
that was going to be my next question. How's that work?
Yeah. Rather than telling you, would it make sense over the next couple of weeks for us to carve out some time so you can see for yourself, that kind of a flow.
Because now that they've shown interest, I would say any further questions, that's a reason to get a call, right?
Yes. Yeah. Once they start getting into, how does it work or whatever? And then, then you might hear, can you send me some information on it? Can you send me a video? That's not an objection. It's okay to send at that point in the call. If they want to see a video, I would shoot a video. Hey, I'll do you one better. I could shoot you a little, like a little demo video. Would that be helpful? Yeah, that'd be great. But you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to book the meeting on the first call. You can sort of like send a nice video or send some, information if you sense that they're interested and it's deep into the call. Obviously, if that comes up at the beginning, which you're going to hear a lot less with this call flow, you'd have a different response. If someone says it at the jump, you might say, hey, Will, just so I don't do you a disservice by flooding your inbox with irrelevant information, would it be okay if I ask you a couple questions first? And if they say no, just send me some information. At that point, I might say, I'm sorry, I can't do that in good conscience, Will, but have a good one, right? I might kind of pull back there, right? So because I don't want to spend my time sending information to people, my time is worth as a salesperson too. So I'm coming at it with an equal status, not up here, not down here, just equal. I certainly don't want to start saying dance monkey dance.
There's a good question here which relates exactly to that, because I think a lot of younger, especially newer reps who come into the world of sales do find it challenging to be equal, especially when you're calling a CFO or like a chief or VP of something and you're like 23, you're kind of green, maybe you've been in for a couple of months, so you don't feel like you know the stuff that well. How does a new rep know they did what they could versus bowing out too soon and taking, a blow off as the truth, let's say?
The context matters. So when you hear resistance on a call, it's either true or not true. So for instance, if someone says we have a vendor for that, we're using someone for that, that is not an objection. That is resistance to a truth. And so if you try to overcome that by saying something like, well, I understand how you feel. Many people felt the same way, but what they found was you're going to piss people off. Mm-hmm. Just like if you're selling meat and this person says, I'm a vegan, that's not an objection. That's the truth. And so we don't want to overcome that objection. We want to accept that. And in this case, probably move on. So it's very contextual. You have to look beyond the surface level answer, and it depends on where you are in the call. In terms of like confidence, that's a big one because you're selling to people and you've never done their job. Everyone on here, when I do workshops, I ask if you have a hobby. Someone's playing golf, someone's playing archery, someone does this, someone does that. And I go, how confident are you that you could teach me about this if I don't know about it? And everyone's like at a 10. I go, what about if you're selling to a CMO or a CTO? And they're like, oh my God, I'm at a 1. So we have to get the knowledge advantage. The advantage that you have is you get to work with lots of companies and people outside of their orbit. And people are always interested in things that can hurt them that other people like them have solved. ChatGPT is excellent for this, but what's even better is if you can get permission to interview customers that switched within the last 30 to 45 days using jobs to be done interview technique. And you can start to feel what I call the black and white version of the infomercial. And the only thing you need to do is figure out what your poke the bear question is to get them to sort of scratch their head, and start to like think a little bit differently. I'll give you another example one just because I just bought a Nintendo Switch 2.
Okay.
All over Reddit is this thing of be careful with the screen because there's no screen protector on it. And if you dock it, it can scratch. So if I was calling people that I knew bought a Nintendo Switch 2, I would say, Will, I'm sure you've read this because I don't want Will to seems like he's in the loop. Like on Reddit, because the new Switch 2 doesn't have protective film on it, people are docking them and they're scratching them on the way out. How are you protecting your screen today? And they might be like, well, I didn't know. Like, oh, you probably looked into a screen protector. Well, what is that or whatever? It's the same idea, but I got to know that question for that person. Now, if Will's playing a PlayStation or he's not a gamer, I discover that I'm bowing out of that call. That's not an objection. That's not a fit.
Yeah, you got the truth in that case.
Yeah.
So how about sometimes when someone tells us something like that, we have a solution that doesn't necessarily, like everyone's doing something. You said this earlier, right? So how do we determine if it's the truth or if there's still something to be understood?
So yeah, this is a key point. No matter what you sell, everyone has a solution in place. So let me give you an example. I call someone who washes their car. They have a solution in place. They have a bucket and sponge, just like your prospect has a solution in place, whether it's a spreadsheet or other software. So when I call them, I'm going to say, Will, when you wash your car, do you wash it yourself or do you use like a bucket and sponge? And Will says, I use a bucket and sponge. And then I'm going to poke the bear. I have to ask a question that illuminates a potential problem with the current solution. I have to know this. So I might say this, Well, I don't know if this is happening to you, but I often see that when people wash their car with a bucket and sponge, dirt can settle to the bottom, get trapped in the sponge, and can scratch their car, get these swirl marks. How are you ensuring that that doesn't happen when you wash your car today? Well, I don't know. Oh, you've probably heard of a grit guard. What's that? A grit guard is this thing that sits in the bottom of the bucket. It's like a cheese grater. You rub your sponge on it, and the dirt settles to the bottom of the bucket and off your car. Right? Same thing happened to me when I went into Fit to Run, not needing anything. I was in the mall with my wife. She was going to return something. And the store associate didn't ask me, do I want new sneakers? Do I have a problem with your sneakers? She goes, are you a runner? Because she looked at my sneakers. And I go, yeah. She goes, training for any races? I go, yeah, half marathon in like a couple months. And she said, oh, you probably had a running gait test. And I said, what's that? Moments later, I'm on the treadmill. I show this on my workshops. She freezes the frame and sees my ankles are overpronating. She goes, notice how your ankles are pronating when you run.
Penguin.
Like a penguin. And I go, so what? She goes, the problem is if you run in sneakers that are not made for pronated feet, you increase your chances of getting plantar fasciitis and runner's knee. If you'd like, I could check your sneakers to see if they're made for pronated feet. And about 8 minutes later, I'm spending $180 on new sneakers and insoles, right? So I have to have a hypothesis. If I said I'm not training for races and I just walk, there's no need to have a further conversation, which is why pitching is kind of madness before we've identified if there's a problem.
Absolutely iconic way to reframe the entire thought on the call there. What do you do when someone just closes you off completely? So let's say we go off with this open that we start with here. And we're up calling about the podcast. Do you still run sponsorships for that, or am I totally lost? Or let's say we get to this point and they say, well, I'm not disclosing any information because I don't know you. Okay. How do you handle that?
I say this in a very common way, a couple things. So first off, let's get back to intent and the nature of cold calling. Some people are not going to disclose anything. Let's even take that up a notch. F you, don't call me anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not disclosing anything. I will never disclose. Let's just make that a little bit higher. I am never disclosing anything to people that make cold calls, especially ones that call me at 3:00 in the afternoon.
On a Friday
on a Friday at night. I might just say this. Okay, have a good day. And then I'll just go and call the next person that doesn't say that, which is most people. And I might even hang up first. How many times does a salesperson get to hang up on another person? I'm not going to try to push that rock up a hill. Shouldn't be that hard. Most people don't react that way. Now, if they say, oh my God, I can't, why are you calling me Friday at 6:00? I might say, oh, sorry. Sounds like I'm calling the wrong coast. Right. I might say that. Yeah. Sounds like I might be making a mistake there. I might do that. But if the person is like, F you, don't ever call me again, never lose my number, I'm going to say, okay, man, have a good day. I can't talk right now. I'm in a meeting. Okay, I'll call you later. I'm not going to say, can I have 37 seconds? I'm just going to lean back and call someone else who isn't in a meeting, which is most people.
What do you say when someone says, can you take me off your list?
Sure.
I say, yeah, happy to. I'll make sure no one from my company ever reached out to you again. Now, that said, I don't hang up. I sometimes just sit with silence.
Yeah. And what's nice about that, Will, is
and then they sometimes go, well, what was actually about? Like, oh, okay, cool, yeah.
What you have is an abundance versus a scarcity mindset. I can't talk right now. Okay, I'll call you later. Or, it sounds like I called you at the worst possible time. Then just lean back and let what happens. And if they hang up, it's okay. You're going to go back on another wave, man. There's limitless waves. You have unbounded.
It's so easier to do this when you're already doing well. But if you can get to that point, or even, you don't even have to pretend. You just need to listen to Josh and see that that's obviously a much better thing than trying to handle, manipulate, or talk someone into
Yes.
anything else.
Yes.
Josh, we're short on time here. What would you recommend people check out from you if they wanted to learn more of this gold stuff here?
If there's one thing, joshbraun.com, in the store, there's a free book called For Sale, and that's a good place to start.
All right, folks, go check out Josh. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn already, do. You will not regret it. Man can turn any life experience into a sales lesson. Josh, this is fab. Always a pleasure with you. Thanks. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you again to our partners, Gong and Just Cool, for making these shows possible. Peace out.